Yeah. What up, what up, what up, what up? I, I'm sorry, y'all. I have I have had a very, very active weekend. If you uh, follow my Instagram, then you've noticed. But with that said, happy Easter to all. Um, if you're into that type of thing, even if you're not, still, I wish all the love and the goodness that comes with the day to you. Hope you had a good weekend. Um, hopefully you got some rest, or um, not even or. Hopefully you got some rest. Hopefully it was productive, right? Anyway, I am. I got this thing said I'm on a nighttime writing stream. I'm not writing. Not writing. Um. So what we doing right now? We really just trying to trying to get stuff together, man. Yeah, we're gonna edit this a little bit. So while we do that, I wanted to see this real quick. I'm not about to watch this whole thing. To be honest, I mean, I'm gonna hold my own personal thoughts about Buddy, but I mean, I was listening to him for a little minute, and then I stopped. I'll just say that. Yeah. What the hell? What's interesting about it though, because Buddy do have millions of followers. I think he got millions of followers. I'm sure across platforms he does, right? But you see his videos all the time, speaking about different things, reacting to certain things, usually financial, the state of black culture, things like that. And so, of course, that type of stuff I'm usually drawn to, and I'm always interested in what society is talking about, you know. So yeah, that's kind of how that. But nonetheless, seems like he's gotten called out, and I'm curious. I want to know what he got called out about by his own subscribers, because I had no clue. So we're all watching this together, but this is not really what we finna be watching. This shit is a 18-minute video, and we're not doing that. So. Definitely don't want to see that.
Used to joke about being knocked off from. You also can think of other names like Gucci that we've all grown to love, like Lululemon, Fila, Under Armour. I don't know if Fila and Under Armour are luxury, but you also can think of other names like Gucci and Prada and this, that, and the other, right? This, that, and the third. And apparently, what they're telling people is that all those items that people used to joke about being knocked off from China, apparently they actually are knockoffs from China. And what China does is they send these products to these luxury brands where they end up putting on their made in the USA and their tags right here in America. But what you're buying for tons and tons of money each and every year is actually knockoff products from China. To give you an example, a $100 pair of leggings from Lululemon, you can actually buy that direct from the same manufacturer.
What the hell?
Actually bringing up the idea that he thinks China is lying, that they're just trying to say this to get around the tariffs. And he could very well be right. I'm sure if you...
Hold on, man. This is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm not going to sit here and watch a dude walk up his street, likely in California. Kind of looks like an old neighborhood I used to live in, Glendora. I'm not gonna watch him. I thought he had yeah. Look at this. Look at this. You can see I'm just panning. Yeah, not gonna do it. Not worth it. Not worth it. All right. So what we are gonna do though, so it's two things I'm gonna do. In this right now, we're just gonna look some information up as far as, well, we're just gonna do some deep dive information, as far as this movie Sinners. All right, me and the fiance, we went out yesterday. We went to go see it. It was dope. So now, I look at stuff kind of differently. I look at film differently, obviously, because I'm in film, as a producer and stuff. So it's not really a. I'm pretty sure I look at things pretty differently. I said pretty twice. That's because I'm also thinking about what I'm about to pull up. Judge your mama. One thing that I was looking at that I thought was really interesting, and I'll show that. And there was this guy who was talking about the film itself and how it was put together. I care about
right now in our business.
I care about the production of things itself, right? Like how things are actually made. So I'm sure you as the audience, you're just gonna watch the movie and enjoy it because that's what you're supposed to do. But when you're on the other side of the fence, the person that's making the project, making the piece of art, making the movie, it's a very, very there's a lot that goes into it. I'll say that. And for me personally, I don't know about you, but for me personally, I absolutely love and I am infatuated and passionate about filmmaking, and not just filmmaking, production of the making of things, like the behind the scenes, like how stuff is made. So that's how I ended up becoming a producer, and it wasn't even like I was like I always want to make stuff. I think naturally as a creator that just always kind of came to me, right? I just always end up creating things. I see things that in my head that I want to see, and I make them. Whatever that is, right? So, I don't know if a lot of people are aware of how films work on set, but I'll give you a quick little thing, and then we're gonna run into this little spot that I was watching before. See.
A lot of my producing collaborators I met.
Yeah.
When she told you,
I thought she was crazy.
Yeah. Like how movies are made and stuff. All right, so, a producer is the one who puts everything together. He gathers everybody, everything. He's the one who answers to distribution. Distribution is the studios, right? So you got studios, Warner Brothers, Disney, you know. So if you got a movie or you're a producer, you talk to them about a script that you have from a writer. Got three elements of this, right? Of the head of any film or any project: producer, director. I guess I should be looking at you, but you got producer, director, and the writer. The writer is where the story comes from, whether that's a book, idea that just someone came up with, or inspiration, or a rewrite, whatever. That's what starts it, right? Actually having that writer. What up, y'all? How y'all doing? My bad. And let me know how the sound is. I can't really tell. But so anyway, long story short, producer is the one who has access to the resources. They are the one who ends up speaking to the distribution, who gives you the green light. Like, okay, I got this movie. I found this writer. He wrote this amazing script, this amazing book. We've adapted to this script right here. So this script, we give it to the distribution. Distribution at that point decides whether or not they want to make it, green light it, right? We even talk about that in the hood, right? Say we put the green light on you niggas, right? Putting the green light on someone is right. So green light in the film, and then after that you find a director, find someone who can shoot it. If the project isn't already tied to a director, then you find someone, or if you as a producer, sometimes they're producer director teams, right? They're, you know, so that could be the case. And if that's the case, that's actually quite awesome. In this case, though, what you see between Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan is the relationship between director, actor. Right? They are a team. So that's almost like the equivalent in music. If you have a producer who make all the beats, and you got a rapper who is the artist who's doing the thing, bringing it all to life, right? So if you can come up with a great producer, come up with a great team, you get a great writer who you can trust. They always got great ideas. They always write great scripts and prose or whatever the case may be. You got a director you trust, or you got a producer you trust. You got an actor you trust. Yeah, those are usually the tops of any of these projects. So with all that being said, I'm a producer. I'm not a director. I'm not even gonna act like I'm a director, because I never had the desire to want to be like, you go over there and you do this and that, and I want to see this or this. No. First and foremost, I'm an actor. So before anything or out of anything, I see things from the eyes of an actor first and foremost. When I'm first looking at a project or watching a movie, I'm paying attention to the characters themselves, right? But subconsciously, I'm paying attention to the production. I went to school. I went to film school, a couple of film schools actually. Shout out to LA Film. Shout out to Hal. And until I ended up picking up the producer hat. That's when I learned that's who I was. I was very resourceful, really good with people, and being able to know who does what really well, being able to put them with other people, bring them into projects and things that I'm doing, stuff like that. All right, produce. I got access to the people who can help us get it done. I can find writers, directors, or whatever. I'll hire them. If I have an idea, I can take it to a distributor, and if they're willing, then I'll go ahead and find me a director, and we'll make the movie. All right, say it all that to say, we're gonna check this out, and see how this project was made from Ryan Coogler's eyes, who is a Ryan Coogler. Did I say Coogler? Kruger? Ryan Coogler. You know it.
Sinners. Coogler was on a very different path than one would normally take to get to the film industry.
Yeah, I played football my whole life. Since I was like 6 or 7 years old or something like that. And it's like that in my neighborhood. And I've been playing my whole life. And coming up, I was kind of like this, it's kind of like this creature of two worlds.
I figured if football didn't work, I could go to medical school. I got a football scholarship to St. Mary's College. They made us take this creative writing class taught by Rosemary Graham. She said, "I want you all to write about your most emotionally intense experience. I want to check out your writing." She also said something about football being a barbaric sport, and we got into a little argument. Turns out this teacher would be so impressed with his writing ability that she would suggest a change in majors for him, saying, "This is really visual. That's rare to be able to do that. You should think about becoming a writer instead of a doctor," she said. "Maybe you could even go to Hollywood and write screenplays."
So I was completely weirded out at that moment. And I'm like, this lady,
What did you think when she told you
I thought she was crazy. Like, I didn't even know what a screenplay was, you know what I mean?
And all of that finally came together for him when he decided to apply for a master's program at USC's Cinematic Arts program, starting his career in filmmaking.
The biggest thing that I walked away with from film.
I'll tell you like this. That makes me want to get my master's. USC, I always wanted to go to USC, to be honest, but I also considered NYU Tisch. They got a school of business. I consider Juilliard for acting, but yeah, get my master's in some sort of production, something like that, somewhere in those lines. So that's a really good idea. I didn't think of that. I got my bachelor's though in business, in entertainment business at that.
In his career in filmmaking.
The biggest thing that I walked away with from film school was just a lot of my colleagues. Like I met the composer that's done all of my films at film school. A lot of my producing collaborators I met there, so that was really, the community was the most valuable thing.
After graduating from the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts in 2011, a place where he'd already directed 4 short films and won awards for 3 of them, he burst onto the scene in 2013 with his first feature-length film, Fruitvale Station.
Please, baby, get back on the train right now. Get back on the train. Meet me in Hayward.
This film would premiere at the 2013 Sundance Festival and would end up winning the Top Audience Award and Grand Jury Prize before going on to a remarkable theatrical run, raking in $17 million. His debut film garnered him a lot of praise around the industry, with one New York Times review connecting him to the industry giants of the past. Mr. Coogler with a ground-level, handheld shooting style that sometimes evokes the spirituality, alert naturalism of Jean-Pierre. And though many a director struggles after finding initial success with their debut film, Coogler upped his game from here, delivering Creed in 2015, Black Panther in 2018, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever in 2022. Only Black Panther Wakanda...
So I don't know for a fact, but what I would conjecture, and I probably need to look this up. So after self-funding Fruitvale Station, which was an independent project, it seems like he potentially got a 1-film movie deal. And why I say 1, you would almost want to think 3, but I wouldn't have thought 3. I wouldn't have thought the studio would give him 3 until, well, you think about it, that's just Creed 1. There's 2 more Creed, so he would have gotten a 3-film deal from that. And him, I mean, Michael B. Jordan as the producer. And then Black Panther, Wakanda. Of course, those are 2. R.P. Chad, but I think if that wouldn't have happened, that could have been easily 3. That would have been a 3-film deal. So that happening would have been... So Chad's demise would have been not just a blow to us, right, but a blow to the studio, as he would have no longer been able to make those other 2 films, right? So the second one, they ended up bringing out his sister, which didn't do as well, right? But yeah, so it makes sense. Like,
Forever had a Rotten Tomatoes score below 90%, and his upcoming film Sinners has brought him to new heights so far, opening with a 100% Rotten Tomatoes score. Now, I will say, Rotten Tomatoes scores are not the end-all be-all for if a movie is good or bad, and you really shouldn't decide whether or not to go see a movie based on it. But it is a great snapshot in time of what audiences and critics alike think in the moment about a film, and the future increase in popularity a director may receive because of it.
Well, life has nearly killed me and my...
And, you know, a lot of times, like, fine directing can make you feel like you're naked. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, directing on a 10-person crew is like being naked in front of 10 people. But if you, with 200 people, you know what I mean? It's a different...
Coogler finally had the credentials to start working on his own movies and have studios come to him to sign on. Early in January 2024, rumors started to swirl of the director having something like that in the works, collaborating again with Michael B. Jordan, who he had worked with in mostly all of his films.
All of these have something in common. Michael B. Jordan is in every one of these films. Is that the secret? Is that, I mean, what makes you...
And see, that's what I was talking about. The producer-actor team, right? So that gives me a whole bunch of comfort as the producer, right? Like, I got me a dope-ass actor, hot in the streets, talented, got the looks, got everything you need, you know, the whole package. Like, hey, okay, that's such an easy ploy for you to take to distribution. Be like, yo, we like them, we like him. Oh, let's do that, right? So, anyway.
Work with Michael B. Jordan.
I mean, look at him, man.
after having gotten sucked into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but miraculously not losing his voice as a director in that world of heavy studio decision-making and a meat grinder for young directors who get used and then spit out. Many thought that this next film would be something Marvel-related, with some speculating that he could be making a film about the Namor Kingdom from Wakanda Forever. But in a world where it seems like everyone is just going on to work with some sort of existing IP, it was a refreshing reveal that he would be working on a genre film of his own design. With the script ready to go, it would seem, Coogler would now embark on the most annoying part for any creative, finding funding. But studio interest was there, and it culminated in an intense 3-week bidding war before being whittled down to 2 studios, Universal and Warner Brothers, trying to get the deal done. But there was a wrinkle to any deal that would be made here. Coogler wanted almost complete ownership of the film, requesting first dollar gross, final cut rights, and ownership of the film after a certain number of years after its release. Warner Brothers would end up being the victor in the end, but not without some internal struggle, apparently. Puck News has some insider reporting that CEO David Zaslav overruled Steve Spira, the president of business affairs at Warner Brothers, who was against giving Coogler this deal. But perhaps after losing one generational director and Christopher Nolan over releasing films straight to digital.
So what you have right now in our business is a lot of grappling and the use of the pandemic as an excuse for say, grappling for short-term advantage. And it's really unfortunate. It's not the way to do business, and it's not the best thing for the health of our industry.
Zaslav saw this as an opportunity to bag a different generational director. We needed to bring creative people back to the company, and so in some cases we may have overspent, Slav acknowledged. I don't think we did, because we wanted to bring the best and the brightest back to Warner Bros. Of course, a lot of this is speculation and rumor, but what wasn't speculation was the reason behind Coogler's request for ownership. For him, it was personal. He would tell Business Insider in an interview that the whole idea of owning it was less about having control over it and more about symbolism, about owning a film that was about black ownership in 1930s Mississippi. That was the only motivation, Coogler said, and this type of deal was only for this specific project.
Boy, that's smart as hell. That's how you do it. That's what you say. Yeah, they can't fade that. And when they seen the project, oh man, when they were seeing them dailies every day, yeah, you're not finna.
Squarespace is also introducing us to a new way of designing a website with its new design intelligence. And it's a lot easier than learning how to play jazz. The cutting-edge AI technology helps you to create a website that fits your preferred...
Hold on. It's a damn ad. Where does ad come from? Where does ad come from?
I was really digging into 2 relationships, one with my maternal grandfather, who I never met and died about a year before I was born. He was from Merrill, Mississippi, and my uncle James, who I came up with my whole life. He passed away while I was in post-production on Creed, and he was from another town in Mississippi.
I would say the biggest influence is probably going to be The Thing by John Carpenter, a couple Robert Rodriguez films too, From Dusk Till Dawn, and The Faculty. And the biggest thing is the love letter to my uncle who passed away in 2015 from Mississippi, moved to Oakland, and he was the oldest male member of my family. And he just had a real passion for the blues, you know.
With this film, the director felt he had a chance to almost dig into his ancestral history a bit. That act of listening to that music and feeling he was there with me is kind of what inspired the period setting and the blues.
Pick poor Robin clean. Pick poor Robin clean.
And that is why the movie is so personal. This film was about the music that was so special to my uncle, and I couldn't be happier with it. And while this story feels like it's set up to just be about vampires, the director promised that it would be surprisingly genre fluid. Yes, vampires are an element, but that's not the only supernatural element. I think it's going to surprise folks in a good way. And that's where we will leave any developments on the actual story, as we don't want to spoil it for any of our viewers.
I'm so glad you said that, because I went into the movie blind, right? I didn't want to know anything. I seen the posters. Of course, I seen the trailers, but I didn't see really anything about it. I didn't know the story. I think I only knew that it obviously was something they was killing. I think my first intention or my first inclination was that it was a horror movie. It's not a horror movie. Like, even if you wanted to be like, you know, afraid of horror films or something, like it wouldn't. If you were are afraid of horror films, you could definitely see this. Not a problem.
So with that, let's get into the production of Sinners. Principal photography began in New Orleans on April 13th, 2024, and would journey across the state of Louisiana in towns of Donaldsonville, Labattyville, and Bogalusa. Perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects for those of us who are super into specific film formats and cameras is this film's use of actual IMAX film cameras, bringing this film into rarefied air, with a small but growing list of films shot in the format, becoming, according to our count, only the 20th feature film to utilize it. Perhaps one aspect of this that
I don't know about y'all, but if the movie is offered in IMAX, I'm going to the Mall of Georgia and I'm seeing it in IMAX. I'm not doing anything else other than it's going to be in IMAX. Believe that.
talked about is Coogler's decision to also use another rare cinema format in the Ultra Panavision as well.
Ultra Panavision is the widest format there is,
which is only around 13 films that have used the format, including more recently Tarantino's Hateful Eight film, which had Warner Brothers help with a 70mm distribution.
Well, here's what makes 70mm so glorious. The movie is shot in 65mm, then projected in 70mm, with an image twice the size of what you're used to, which will make your enhanced viewing even doper.
It would seem that Coogler's deal with Warner Brothers opened the door for him to use these exclusive formats. Jeff Goldstein securing an ability for us to have IMAX screens and availability for it to be projected on film prints, the access to those things left over from that Christopher Nolan era, and they've made it available to filmmakers like Matt Reeves, Denis Villeneuve, and then making it available to me.
We shot the film using two different camera systems. One proprietary to Panavision is called Ultra Panavision 70, used on films like Ben-Hur and most recently The Hateful Eight. But another format we use is IMAX.
Now you might say, those are two very different formats, and IMAX being a very tall 1.43:1 ratio, and Ultra Panavision being an ultra-wide 2.76:1 aspect ratio. So how does this work?
So here we have a shot from the opening of our film Sinners. This is the same shot shown captured on IMAX film format, spun through horizontally, and this is that same image as it would look if it was captured on Ultra Panavision.
A lot of the times, directors will utilize IMAX for big moments in the film, or in the case of the Hunger Games usage of this camera, opening up the taller aspect ratio.
Let's check that out again. To me,
same shot shown
an ultra-wide 2.7.
That's so fascinating and beautiful.
To 1 aspect ratio. So how does this work?
So here we have a shot from the opening of our film Sinners. This is the same shot shown captured on IMAX film format, spun through horizontally, and this is that same image as it would look if it was captured on Ultra Panavision.
A lot of the times, directors will utilize IMAX for big moments in the film, or in the case of the Hunger Games usage of this camera, opening up the taller aspect ratio for the start of the Hunger Games. For Coogler, though, he had a very specific emotional and narrative reason for both of the formats.
When we realized we were gonna do large format, first thing we did was test it. And we went out to, like, I wanna say it's Lancaster, like to where we can get the flattest horizon, because that's a defining feature of the Mississippi Delta.
This idea was to really capture the isolation you feel in these locations, with the landscape wide enough you can see the curve of the earth in the distance.
We went out there and we talked about the storytelling narrative of isolation, because that was what I felt when I went to Clarksdale and the areas around it. You would be on.
But I tell you like this, my land out there just outside of Selma in Alabama, that shit's isolated. It's spooky, bro.
These roads, man, for forever. And as soon as we laid out those Ultra Panavision lenses, bro, and put one body out there, you know what I mean, on that horizon, like, oh yeah, it's gotta be this. You know, like it's gotta be, like, this has to be our workhorse.
From that, they would utilize IMAX for the huge moments of the film. It was an incredible experience, using Ultra Panavision and full frame. It helped us immerse ourselves in a specific period of American history, especially for Black communities. My family's history was a big reference point. And while it's great to use an IMAX film camera for your production, it's a whole other thing to use it effectively. And Coogler would get some advice from the master of IMAX himself, Christopher Nolan. I got advice from Christopher Nolan and Nolan's wife, Emma Thomas, who are masters of the IMAX form. It was our first time working with large format photography. We were doing something that hasn't done before, combining ultra Panavision, which is 2.76:1, very wide, with the full frame IMAX film. For the film, they would utilize both of the famed IMAX MSM 9802 camera, which Christopher Nolan curiously seems to be using instead of the new IMAX cameras on his new film, The Odyssey, and the Panavision Panaflex System 65 Studio and Panavision APO Penatar lenses.
Yo, Nolan's movie, The Odyssey, yo, whatever he touches is like, Ryan Coogler is our, and when I say our, you know I mean our. He our Christopher Nolan.
Clearly took full advantage of the
you see it just like this, you know what I mean?
resources Warner Brothers provided for this film. And Coogler would even show his absolute love of film formats in general, with a really in-depth look at the difference between formats and aspect ratios in this video with Kodak, which is a pretty awesome video.
We worked with Warner Brothers, worked with Photochem to get this out to 5 theaters that are limited in the US. The Vista Theater in Los Angeles.
But though Coogler had finally gotten production on this film underway, he would run into some issues with the production that would result in running up the production costs above the $80 million budget.
And I think we can all blame the bad weather that we endured for sort of keeping us there, trapping us there, and I think in ways it really served us and brought us closer.
And perhaps due to the unusual deal that Coogler made with Warner Brothers, they reportedly were not interested in covering those overages. And according to the World of Real, Coogler would cover those overages himself. Now that's not super widely supported with a lot of other reporting, so I would take that with a bit of a grain of salt for now. But it's quite clear that the film did go over its agreed budget, and some maneuvering had to be done to get it back on track.
Just step aside and let me on in now.
Why you need him to do that?
Next up to figure out was how to take modern towns and reverse time to make them look like they had come straight out of the 1930s.
If you came to the actual location where we're shooting the lumber mill, the juke, it's unreal. They have a bunch of cars from the 30s.
He is such an amazing actor. The dude plays Cornbread. His name escapes me right now, but he plays such a great emotional anchor for just about anything I see him play in. All the way from Ballers to, what was the heartfelt movie, man? I can't think of it. Oh, it's escaping me. That's horrible.
It's the parking lot is a sand lot.
The first location and set was in the town of Donaldsonville, a town just west of New Orleans, and perhaps in a bit of a homage to the time period and subject of the story. This town would become the third largest Black community in the state after the Civil War, and would even elect the first U.S. African-American mayor, Pierre Caliste Landry. So certainly a town with a history very relevant to the film. Here they would completely transform an entire block with dirt, hand painting signage, and tons of time period appropriate cars, all provided by Red Stick Model A Club. The immersion certainly helped the actors transport themselves back into that 1930s mindset.
And then of course we got to step on set, onto our incredible set that was just like, again, it looked like one of those pictures in one of those books that I would stare at for so long, was just like suddenly in front of me and I was in it.
Of course, that wasn't the only element of the production that would help the actors get into character, with two-time Oscar winner and costume designer Ruth E. Carter putting together the incredible outfits.
She has won multiple Oscars for her designing. Costume design, she did the Panther movies.
Talking with Ruth Carter, our costume designer, that was one of my favorite parts of I'd say pre-production, but there were fittings throughout the duration of the shoot, but going into Ruth's office and that fitting room and seeing the world on the walls was just like the most amazing thing ever.
Hey, brother. Be careful.
One of the main draws to this movie is Michael B. Jordan, who doesn't just portray one character, but two.
You twins?
Nah, we cousins.
Sinners revolves around those gangster twins, Smoke and Stack, which are both characters possessing distinct personalities, with one having more violent tendencies and another having a softer demeanor. Coogler has twins in his family, with 2 aunts, one of which being his godmother, which he could tell apart by the way they hold their face and what their energy is like, which is a great inspiration for the movie. So Coogler hired consultants that could advise him and Michael on the role.
And with this movie, I wanted to hire some twin consultants for Mike to talk to. I got 2 homies named Noah and Logan Miller.
The identical twins would end up explaining what their mindset was like as twins, which led to some fascinating revelations.
They would write up these kind of journals, you know what I mean, for him to kind of look at and study, and they would kind of explain the mindset of an identical twin. And what I learned that was also fascinating was that when identical twins siblings pass, like they don't live long after. You know what I'm saying? Like it's one of those things where it's such a symbiotic relationship.
Learning when Smoke and Stack ought to split up and why they stick together, Michael B. Jordan could start selling his role. Knowing this, we could maybe expect Coogler playing with the concept, splitting the characters up, potentially even leaving us guessing who is really who or what is going to happen next with one of the twins. However, an almost identical triplet was needed to sell the twin effect by hiring a body double.
We had to cast a twin double, which is a actor who basically is the same build, shape.
Brother, no, man.
To act across from him, so he can know where to look. But
So he's not talking to himself.
A twin body double is cast that has the same complexion, height, overall build quality as.
Man, you can't tell me I couldn't have did.
Oh my God, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, man.
Filmed in the scene at the same time and edited accordingly in post.
I would have moments on set where I was just like exhausted watching him go through the changes, and we would shoot a scene and then he'd be gone for, they got that changeover time down to, pretty short.
Knowing the scenes from both perspectives and keeping the same positions in mind is quite the challenge.
But real talk, like the highest degree of difficulty was on Mike. Like acting is an insanely difficult thing to do.
It was challenging, the technical aspect of it all, just like, being able to operate in 2 spaces, acting off of sometimes a tennis ball, and sometimes nobody at all. I know it was really challenging for the other actors too.
And filming such sequences would be nigh impossible without some technical help. Luckily, the technologies that helped the crew out were just recently revealed on the Jimmy Fallon show.
You actually brought a picture of one of the things that you're wearing. Yeah. Is this the thing that you have to wear?
It's called the halo. You know what I'm saying?
This is not in the movie, by the way. This thing. That's not.
They developed some new technology, some new cameras. They call it the halo that we use.
It's a tool so obscure, it's not even listed on the company's websites of its creations. The Spherus Halo, a ring of what looks like GoPro Max 360 cameras that record a 360 image of the actor that wears it. Wild Rabbit Aerial themselves explained what this device really is. It is a camera array which was developed together with VFX supervisor for Sinners, Michael Rala. And looking deeper into their websites, we can get more of an idea as to how this array really works. Other camera arrays the companies have constructed use a multitude of red Komodo cameras, as an example, and the video files are synchronized and stitched together, taking timecode into account with 3-axis stabilization and ensuring that the stitch lines are as invisible as possible. Creating a 3D animation of Michael's head must be a bit more of a breeze now, incorporating live performance capture in between filming the different twin takes.
We got a brilliant visual effects department, man. Our head of VFX, Michael Raleigh, and our VFX producer, James Alexander, they developed a lot of excellent technologies for us.
Filming would wrap up on July 17th, 2024, and head to post-production. Ludwig Göransson, the Oscar winner from Nolan's film Oppenheimer, would be brought on to compose for the film. And according to some reports, Sinners is going to need to gross at least $185 million to even break even.
It will.
And for those of you who are always clamoring for new original stories from studios, this is certainly a film that you should take a break and go support. So let us know what your thought of the film is below if you go and see it, and if you like the production of this film and the crazy twin aspect of it.
Y'all know how we do around here, love makers. We show love, man. Get this like, bro. That's an excellent video. I'll leave a link in the description for the YouTube video. I'm saying, man, that movie is so awesome. You know, it's just a very good, solid film. Nothing that I was expecting, I'd say that. But if you haven't yet, you should go see it. I've talked to quite a few people today, and they have. And it's a good time. You know, it's a real good time. Go see the movie. I need to be in something like this. Don't y'all want to see me in something like this? Don't y'all want to see me do something? I will. I'm ready for it. I already know. I know what's going on. Alright, let's see. What do we got next? What do YouTube got for us? What do YouTube got for us? See, they trying to show me nothing but it now. We'll watch I'll watch movie reviews after this. I'm gonna make one myself too. So just know I will have that up by Wednesday. Make sure y'all like and subscribe if y'all haven't already, so y'all can check that out and get that notification when it pops up. In the meantime, oh, look at this. It's crazy. The AI thumbnail is crazy. Look how long Shawty's forearms are. That's crazy. Why they got his forearms like that, bro? But I do want to check that video out because I want to get my body up. I need like another 20, 30 pounds. Yeah, like another 20 pounds. And let's see. What we got here? What we got? Oh, what we got here? I've been watching this. I've been watching Queso play this game called Half Sword. It is hilarious, man. And what's funny about it is how they swing, right? It's like it's not even. What?
If I go on one more date, if I have one more encounter with a man in his early 30s telling me that what he's looking for is a hustler, that he's looking for a queen to build an empire with, to be hustling for the next 5 years, I'm officially tapping out, because what y'all don't get, I'm trying to have some babies and you want me out here working too and hustling? I'm officially tapping out, because what y'all don't get is us girlies in our early 30s, we've been hustling. We fell victim to the girl boss shit.
Whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, before he even go in, I'm not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that. We're gonna talk about movies, because that was crazy. Yo, so one of the previews, I can't talk. I'm tired, y'all. It's been a long weekend. It's been a good weekend, but it's been long, been busy. Not many hours of sleep. And I got my food. I need to eat. I'm hungry. But one of the movies, one of the previews was for the new Final Destination. I remember when the first one came out in the theater. I loved that shit. But the new one looks crazy. It was like, I think it was like in a Sky Needle type thing. Maybe they were in Tokyo or something. But anyway, they were up high in one of those little circular domes, and it went crazy. Like, ugh. Whew, whew. I mean, to this day, I still don't get behind cars that got, or trucks that got those logs on the back, like the logs. Oh, no. You're not gonna see me, buddy. Get my ass right in the next lane. Why this movie scene changed Torn forever.
Till this day, this is still one of the most unsettling on-screen deaths of any movie I have ever seen. And no one knew it at the time, but this would be the beginning of Death's endless hunt to track down those who cheated their demise. the first kill of the franchise, and that's not counting the actual plane crash where the other 39 students died, but the first one where death comes back for those who escaped its design. I love this franchise, although the later films after the third one became lively, basically murder porn with the symbolism and remorse for the characters being completely forgotten, which might just be a reflection of how numb the world has become in general when it comes to these tragedies, but that's a different discussion for another day. What I would like to focus on in general is how this franchise, especially the first one along with 2 and 3, mastered death anxiety. The amount of effort that went into crafting these scenes was so over the top that probably the majority of effort that went into shooting these scenes went unnoticed. That's why I wanted to discuss Todd's death scene and how meticulous the creators were about it. See, at this point in the film, the kids have attended their school memorial to pay respects to those who have died on Flight 180, and we later cut to Todd, who seems to be entering his nightly routine before he goes to bed. The director has stated that ever since the characters cheated death, the world around them has become more skewed, and the objects around them begin to change their positioning. A great example of this is how the photos on the wall at the airport terminal are rearranged after Alex and the others are kicked off the plane. Right before they board the plane, these 3 bright green photos are positioned directly behind Alex and Todd as they face the gate. Then once they're kicked off the plane, those 3 photos are now rearranged with 3 different ones. And the same thing happens to these line of photos near the door. They were arranged one way and now they're different. This type of cinematography and visual storytelling is done.
You knew that? Did you know that? Chat, did you know that? I didn't know that shit. What? I never noticed. I was probably high, but I never noticed that shit.
To portray that visceral feeling you feel in your gut when you just know something isn't right about a situation, but you're just not sure what, and you can't quite put your finger on it, but you just know something feels off. That feeling is what the director James Wong accomplished here. This is the end of Todd's journey, and where we'll ultimately explore the cinematography, the hidden signs, and how much deeper this scene really was than you originally remember. The scene begins in the hallway where the camera is already creeping towards the bathroom, and by this shot alone, we're already aware of an ominous presence. Throughout the film, Death's presence is represented by wind and shadows, and in this scene, we eventually see both. In the first shot panning down in front of the house, if we look closely, there's obviously no wind blowing outside because the leaves are completely still. But cutting to the inside once Todd enters the frame, that allows us to instantly notice the leaves blowing outside the bathroom window, symbolizing how death has now arrived. Then we have to acknowledge how the environment has subtly become skewed once we notice the photos on the wall are actually stretched, which was a detail that was pointed out by the director himself, and how the hallway feels like it's closing in on Todd. This type of cinematography is known as forced perspective.
See, this is why I love movies. I didn't notice this. I didn't notice this shit. I just know dude's walking to his death somehow, because the music, right? Like, you're not thinking of any of this. But that's composition. That's clean composition. When I do photography, I talk to people. See how it's perfectly even on both sides and both the frame.
It's a technique that's used to emphasize Todd's last moments. The lines of perspective in the hallway also tell an interesting story as well. Before Todd enters the frame, our eyes are already drawn to the bathroom, as though there is some significance about this place before the character arrives. We could even go as far as to say the main item that sets all of this in motion is already in the frame as well, waiting at the end of the hallway, and the perspective lines in the frame are leading us to the focal point. Visual foreshadowing has always been a core strength of the Final Destination films, especially the first one. This whole composition reinforces the director's statements of wanting the characters to feel like they were being cornered by death. Now, let's bring Todd back into the picture as the push-in camera movement sort of turns into a tracking shot, but not really. Notice how the camera is following Todd, but at the same time, it also seems to move around in a way that implies that at the moment, he's really not that important yet. Now, of course, Todd is important to the scene. I mean, we're here because of him. But right now the focus is more so the environment he's in and the placement of the objects around him so we can see what's different later. Right now is a very pivotal moment to establish that there are other forces at play that he is not aware of. It feels as though something is actively and carefully scoping his environment to find the most effective way to take his life. And that's actually pretty unsettling to think about. I mean, if you're home right now, imagine how something could be planning to drop the ceiling fan on your head the next time you're under it. Or how there's possibly a small sharp item waiting for you on the staircase once you're done watching this video. Or maybe it's just not your time. And thank you for letting me put those thoughts in your head. But anyway, you get the point. Now, after Todd feels the breeze from the window, which is basically death entering the bathroom, he closes the window and we see that slow panning camera work that shows death closing the door. Now, if you're just watching this scene casually, then seeing the wind swing the door shut, or not seeing the wind swing the door shut, is just another creepy horror trope added to this scene, preparing the audience for something ominous. And while this is true, there's a little more meaning behind it. See, Todd has already cheated death once. And although this is death here we're talking about, I mean an otherworldly force tracking down its victims, it's still no fun to completely strip the viewers of hope for the characters. Right, and in the film, the presence of death does have its limits and can't directly hurt you, like cause a sudden aneurysm or heart attack, but it can put you in a situation to hurt or rather kill yourself. And the last thing it wants is someone disrupting that plan when the victim is already alone and vulnerable. So closing the door not only traps Todd, but it helps to keep others from possibly interfering. And that's smart visual storytelling combined with established rules all packed into one camera pan. And before the scene makes its first cut away from Todd to Alex, we're left to ponder with one of the strangest close-ups you could imagine, which is the toilet water valve leaking. Now, as a viewer watching this for the first time, it's impossible to know where this is going. And your mind is struggling to calculate the endless possibilities of how this guy is about to die from something as small as a leaky water valve. At this time, it feels like it's pretty clear that Todd is going to die. But cutting to Alex in this moment does something very interesting for the viewer. It introduces the idea that although all hope is probably lost, the one kid with the magical premonitions might actually be able to save his best friend. And keep in mind, there is no dialogue throughout this whole sequence. This is all completely visual narration. Now, the moments with Alex actually won't play a major role throughout this analysis except for what I just mentioned, pertaining to the visual narrative pointing out his premonitions, and one other important hidden clue that I don't think I've ever seen anyone else discuss, but we'll talk about it later. What you'll come to notice a lot in this analysis is that the objects that tend to play a major role in this visual narrative are always positioned in a close-up shot front and center. Shots like this could be visual foreshadowing for what's to come, or it could easily be a misdirection attempt from the creators. There's actually a lot of shots like this with Todd's death scene that I'll further expand on throughout this analysis. But either way, it's an important element to the story, and the anticipation of finding out how things will unfold demands our attention. Once the camera cuts back to Todd, notice how once again the focus isn't immediately on him, and instead it's on the razor laying on the counter. Then right after he...
And it's crazy, because if you really are paying attention, just watching this right now, that's doing it to me. Right now. Just the thought of that close-up shot and having it so... stepping on the razor, bro.
Cuts himself in the mirror, the puddle gets closer, and he notices Death's shadow. And at this very moment, there's two reoccurring themes that the film is establishing for us. And that's the use of shadows and reflections. Throughout the film, reflections act as a way for characters, especially Alex, to perceive things that others can't, reinforcing the idea that he has a heightened awareness of fate. Mirrors and glass surfaces often distort reality, hinting that what's seen isn't necessarily what will happen. The use of mirrors and shadows in the film also suggests a fractured reality where fate lurks just beyond perception, blurring the line between what's seen and what's inevitable. And once again, this is another impressive method the film uses to reinforce the narrative. Another thing that I'll also point out here that's actually difficult to notice, but I still think it's worth mentioning, and that's the fact that every set that was built for the film had an exact duplicate set where things would be slightly off. The director James Wong has mentioned that the floor tile and walls in this scene eventually become skewed. And if you think back, that's exactly what we saw in the airplane terminal scene that I mentioned previously with the pictures on the wall. These alignments are just a little off, just enough to feel strange. But this is also something you'd never notice as a viewer. Even now it's difficult to see, but even if you don't notice it, it's still the fact that this information may now encourage you to watch the film with a different perspective. And on top of that, if you didn't already have enough to pay attention attention to, well, you know that window Todd just put down like a second ago? Yeah, well, if you pay close attention in this pan across the room after he sees the shadow, that window is up again. At this point, there's so much happening that it's easy to miss a detail like that. Now back to Todd cutting himself. A detail that feels like it could be tied to his death happening with a razor, and we see the sight of blood, but it's actually not tied to his death besides the fact that Todd is fiddling with an area of his body that he'll soon be hanging from. Even afterwards, when he picks up the sharp pair of scissors, you might imagine him slipping and the scissors getting shoved up his nose. And then there's another third sudden misdirection where he unplugs the radio and we can see the puddle near his feet, assuming that this could all end in electrocution. But once again, it's just another way to tease the audience and add suspense. With scenes like this, you want to add suspense, but you also don't want to bore the viewer, which means the build-up needs to be justified. But we can be pretty sure though that at this point, the puddle will be a part of Todd's death in some way, since it seems to be the only common denominator between all of these shots. We constantly cut back to the progression of the leak and how the puddle is basically following Todd around the bathroom. And fun fact, while we're at the radio scene, which I'm pretty sure most Final Destination fans might be aware of by now, but that was a John Denver song playing on the radio. And there are John Denver songs playing multiple times throughout the movie as sort of a bad omen. Anytime one of his songs are playing, something bad follows. But anyway, Todd walks to the shower, and then there's a quick cut watching the puddle follow closely behind. Now, once we cut back to Alex as he seeks a little stress relief from his porn magazine, there's another detail that I've never really seen anyone talk about before, as previously mentioned, that I would like to point out right now. It's another one of those visual narrative elements that this movie is filled to the brim with, and it's also shown many times throughout this scene with Alex. Once he throws the magazine and sees Todd's name on a shredded piece of magazine page as a clue, we are presented with a perfect medium close-up which contains another hidden clue. In this shot, Alex's attention is directed off screen at the shredded paper on his knee, but then right beside him is a foreshadowed clue and the mechanics of a concept that he will soon come to understand later. Alex is positioned beside 7 interlinked monkeys that are hanging from his bookshelf, and along with all the other hidden details in this film, we're now presented with 7 monkeys that represent the 7 survivors of Flight 180. That's Alex, Claire, Carter, Terry, Billy, Valerie, and Todd. But now let's dive a little deeper. Let's think about why they may have chosen monkeys to represent this connection when they technically could have shown 7 of anything to represent this link. Well, this hints at the popular phrase monkey see, monkey do that suggests mindlessly following a pattern, which is similar to how Death's design operates. Even though Alex tries to break the pattern, the others tend to fall into predictable responses like fear, skepticism, and outright refusal to believe him, leading to their inevitable deaths. This is a symbol of how trying to outrun fate is futile and how everyone eventually follows the design, just like the monkeys are linked in the chain. Alex and the others are bound by an invisible thread, each pulled along the same path, unable to break free, as if their fates are echoing one another in a silent, inescapable rhythm. Now, here's the moment that's somewhat comedic, but also still hard to watch till this day for me. We get another brief shot of the puddle creeping towards Todd. He slips and falls into a retractable clothesline, and while he struggles to maintain his balance, the line does about 3 laps around his neck. He collapses into the shower, knocking over the body wash on the way down, which makes it impossible for him to stand and release himself. Now that death finally has Todd back in its grasp after a meticulous setup, the camera now pushes in aggressively on Todd's face, his struggle, and his expressions. As mentioned previously, the camera movement expressed how Todd wasn't important yet, but now he is, or rather his demise is. At this point is where things become very intense and it becomes difficult to acknowledge all the hidden signs and foreshadowed elements that led up to Todd's death. So first, let's look at the moments that foreshadowed this scene, then we'll point out the hidden moments throughout this scene. When the film starts, the first image we see is a man hanging from a wire, symbolizing how Todd is the first death amongst the group hanging from a wire. Then after boarding the plane and the girls ask Alex to move, he looks up at Todd and he gives Alex a knife slit and a noose around the neck gesture. And this foreshadows how Todd mistakenly cuts his neck and how he was later hung in that same.
See, man, I had to fix the
is a man hanging.
Man, I missed that little part.
It becomes difficult to expressed how Todd wasn't important. The setup, the
my bad.
balance, the line does about 3 laps around his neck. He collapses into the shower, knocking over the body wash on the way down, which makes it impossible for him to stand and release himself. Now that death finally has Todd back in its grasp after a meticulous setup, the camera now pushes in aggressively on Todd's face, his struggle, and his expressions. As mentioned previously, the camera movement expressed how Todd wasn't important yet, but now he is, or rather his demise is. At this point is where things become very intense and it becomes difficult to acknowledge all the hidden signs and foreshadowed elements that led up to Todd's death. So first, let's look at the moments that foreshadowed this scene, then we'll point out the hidden moments throughout this scene. When the film starts, the first image we see is a man hanging from a wire, symbolizing how Todd is the first death amongst the group hanging from a wire. Then after boarding the plane and the girls ask Alex to move, he looks up at Todd and he gives Alex a knife slit and a noose around the neck gesture. And this foreshadows how Todd mistakenly cuts his neck and how he was later hung in that same exact order. While Todd struggles to survive, they pay homage to Psycho here with the showerhead shot, because the creators saw a great opportunity and it also works for the scene. We also get a shot of the door and Todd's dad sleeping to establish that help more than likely won't make it and he will not be heard. Then if you remember the earlier establishing close-up shot of the shelf in the bathroom where things were one way and now you can see the objects have moved and all of the toys are now repositioned to watch Todd as he fades away. Also, the clock beside Todd's father shows 10:39 and there's the number 39 popping up once again. 39 students died on the plane, and the next victim street address after Todd is also 39. And there are other references of the number 39 throughout the film, but this is once again just more secrets in the cinematography. Now, instead of watching Todd completely struggle throughout this moment until he dies, the creators wanted to introduce one last possibility of hope for the character to once again tease the audience. He spots the scissors on the counter, something we would have originally questioned as a possible cause for his death. But now the creators have changed the context along with our perspectives, and now we see it as a way of Todd cutting himself free. If only he could reach the scissors because they seem so close. There's even a close-up shot to establish the distance, build suspense, and hope. But unfortunately, Todd loses his life, and we get to see the puddle returning to the toilet as though the leak never existed. And this is a super rare occurrence because this is the only time in the film it ever happens, where death basically cleans up after it's done. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the only time this ever happens in the franchise. Such an iconically terrifying moment that still holds up till this day in my opinion. It honestly doesn't feel like this much effort goes into the kills anymore in the franchise, but hopefully we're able to get some fun stuff like this in the upcoming new Final Destination Bloodlines. But as always guys, thank you for watching.
Yo, that was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. Y'all know what we do, man. Show this dude some love, man. Go ahead and get this like. Man, yo, that's crazy. Hey, see? Ain't that what I said? This franchise is the main reason why I never drive behind trucks with logs anymore. I'm telling you. Man, it's crazy. And everybody get it. No one's escaped. I mean, who is this dude? What else he got? Only got 62K subs. I really kind of want to see this, but I don't know if y'all have seen this.
Okay, this is tough. Where do I start? I was unbelievably impressed by this film. From the score to the cinematography, from the writing, the acting. I mean, this is probably Michael B. Jordan's best performance in his career. I mean, the camera work is absolutely something that I am going to further explore on my channel at a later time, so please be on the lookout for that. But just the way this film looks visually, you just have that immersive experience where you feel like you've been teleported to this time. After seeing this film, it is pretty clear to me that Ryan Coogler is definitely a fan of horror. He understands understands the tropes, he understands the campiness of horror, but he also understands where to divert from that style, where it needs something fresh, where you should explore and try something different. And on top of that, it's also one of the most heartfelt horror films I've seen in a very long time. I was so excited for this film, my expectations for it was through the roof, and I'm happy to say that I was not disappointed. I will say this one thing though. At one point in the film, I started asking myself, I was like, is this a musical? Like, what's going on here? But the truth is that there is a balance of music, and music plays a really big role in this movie. You just have to see it to understand. Okay, this is tough. Where do I start?
Yeah, I agree with him. Look, you start asking yourself some questions at a certain point, but those questions get answered. No, you have some questions after a while, but those questions have answers after a while. I said that right, didn't I? I'm tired, y'all. As a matter of fact. Let's see what we got here, man. What we got here. Alright. Yeah, that was crazy, y'all. I'm sorry, that's so rude. But you know what? Once again, y'all know how we do. Show the dude some love, man. Go ahead and get this subscription, man. We're going to go ahead and start following you, man. I think I know what this is. Y'all want to do one more? This one, what, 15 minutes? Okay. All right. I'm going to do one more of these. This dude is dope. Nocturnal Critic. Let's see. One more. 12 minutes.
Hereditary is the kind of horror film you end up with when the director enjoys traumatizing you. It has one of the most disturbing climaxes in horror movie history, but Peter's final moments as, well, Peter, before the Demon King payment takes over might arguably be the most traumatizing scene in particular, in my opinion. Maybe even more frightening than Charlie's decapitation for many reasons that will eventually be explored later in this video. But first, here's some quick context. If you're a horror fan, which you probably are since you clicked on this video, you already knew from the thumbnail that this scene is from Hereditary, a 2018 movie written and directed by Ari Aster and distributed by A24. It was Aster's featured directorial debut and became A24's highest grossing film at the time, which is a major milestone for most horror films, and that's because of two key factors. One, Hereditary excels from a storytelling perspective. That's because it uses a lot of uncanny audio visuals to amplify its sense of unease. And it doesn't just rely on jump scares to scare the audience. It crafts an atmosphere so thick with tension and grief that the horror feels inescapable. And two, the cinematography. Aster intentionally tried to make the scenes inside the house cramped and, in his own words, a dollhouse aesthetic. The idea here is to make us feel like there's danger lurking everywhere by having disturbing silhouettes and the environment engulfed in shadows, while also misdirecting us with close-ups and ultimately reminding us that just like in a dollhouse, these characters are not in control and their fate has already been decided. In the scene we're going to discuss, Peter's character specifically has suffered a lot up to this point. There was his grandmother Ellen's passing, which is where the film begins with the obituary exposition. Then him accidentally killing his sister Charlie while ironically trying to save her due to the cult's manipulation, and then ultimately being tortured by one of the 8 kings of hell, Payman, and the cult before eventually discovering his charred father's corpse, his possessed demonic mom, and then meeting his own demise. Peter gets no breaks throughout this film and can barely find peace even when he's trying to sleep. Ari Aster ensures that Peter is only treated like the sacrificial lamb he is, and he wants this to be very clear and upsetting to the audience. This scene is not only riddled with many personal fears from Ari, but it shows his enjoyment of successfully traumatizing the viewer with many unforgettable repulsive images. Although it's unfortunate for Peter, all of these misfortunes are crucial for the Demon King Payman to possess him. Peter being haunted by Charlie's death leaves him emotionally shattered. Then Annie, becoming increasingly unstable and hostile towards him, deteriorates his relationship with his family. And by the end of this sequence, Peter is left mentally and emotionally exhausted and defenseless. This leaves him as an empty vessel, which is the ideal vulnerable state to be inhabited by the demon Payman. The scene begins with a hard cut, transitioning from day to night as we can see that the house is completely surrounded by Ellen's fellow naked cult members. They all face the house like an audience ready to observe as Payman completes his ritual. And if we look closely, we can still see the flickering light on the trees from where Payman engulfed Steve in flames near the window. This scene is abrupt and shocking because it's thrust upon us as viewers, which is actually foreshadowing for Peter once we cut to the next scene where he's waking up and will also be thrust into his final moments. We open with a close-up here as Peter is awoken by a weird noise. For the moment, we're left to wonder what it is just like him. He looks out of the window where the candlelit ritual in the treehouse is waiting for him. This is Peter's last warning sign, which has been foreshadowed and constantly ignored by him throughout the film.
Because he literally refuses to look at all the signs that are being literally handed to him the entire play.
Interesting. So he thinks he has control.
When his mom slept there after Charlie's death, Peter could see the red light from the space heater through the window. And now that the cult is there with the candles, he sees an orange light. Red and orange are often colors associated with danger and warning signs, which is another reference back to Peter ignoring clear signs. And afterwards is where we get to see this first horrifying wide-angle shot. This shot is definitely creepy at first glance. Annie, possessed by the demon Payman, cling to the wall in the darkness above Peter. But that's only what we see. If we further observe the blocking of these characters, which is their position in the frame, it's very fitting that Payman is placed above Peter in the frame, because Payman is believed to be an angel who followed behind Lucifer in his rebellion against God. Given his high rank and powerful position in hell, it makes sense that Payman would be placed high above Peter in this shot, and Peter on the other hand is insignificant and unaware of his impending doom. This is a common visual technique used in filmmaking to convey the power dynamics of their relationship. Then in this medium shot, we get to see our first sample of what Payman is capable of in a possessed body once the ritual is right around the corner. He silently floats through the air into the darkness while Peter is left once again vulnerable and clueless. Ari is purposely subverting our expectations here with Payman's slightly goofy but creepy way of leaving Peter's room. Although it's unexpected, it's very effective at complementing the unsettling tone. And it's also important to mention that throughout this sequence, Payman primarily holds a position of power above Peter in the frame. Only once does the dynamic change throughout Peter's final moments, and once we get to that scene, I'll further explain why this temporary shift happens. Once Peter steps into his parents' bedroom, we receive our first big narrative audio element from this sequence, outside of the constant buzzing sound of flies.
Mom? Dad?
And it's the sound of Payman ripping the cord from the piano that's later used to decapitate Annie. After Peter closes Charlie's room door, which was left open by the cult, we get another impressive wide shot here, which not only shows how alone Peter is in this moment, but it symbolizes how the darkness is beginning to close in on him. And what's even more clever here is how it's revealed right afterwards downstairs in the bottom right-hand corner of the frame that the wire was indeed stripped from the piano, connecting the visual narrative to the audio we heard prior. This can be easily missed because it's so subtle, but Ari is the type of artist that likes to take full advantage of the canvas. Every frame and visual motif had a deliberate purpose. Even now in this frame, there's a miniature to the left once again symbolizing control and manipulation. So one side is foreshadowing what's to come while the other side reinforces the narrative, with the subject Peter being the targeted focal point in the center. And now we're arriving at one of my favorite shots from the film, where Peter discovers his father, Steve's charred corpse, in front of the fireplace. And once he walks into frame, we the audience discover the demon Payman's new hidden positioning in the house, and he is once again positioned above Peter on the ceiling. And in a very twisted and traumatizing way, this is the last time we'll ever see the remaining family members all together in one frame again. This particular medium shot is actually overflowing with symbolism though, for several reasons. But first we'll talk about the blocking or positioning of the characters, and not only Payman as previously discussed. We already understand that Payman is framed above Peter because it displays a position of power, and Peter is positioned below in a vulnerable and unaware position. But now we have Peter's father Steve positioned at the bottom of the frame. On the surface, Steve is positioned at the bottom on the floor because he's dead and he was burned alive. But beyond that, Steve represented good and normality in the Graham household. He sort of served as Peter's last defense or protector throughout their family's tragic dynamics. But Steve representing good has fallen, and Payman representing evil has risen. And finally, Peter, taking up most of the frame, is now the current focus. After cutting away to scan Steve's body and identifying that it's him from his wedding ring, we jump to a medium close-up, now cutting Steve completely out of the frame. Because just as Steve is no longer in the frame, it's also clear that he is no longer in Peter's life. It's a required part of Peter that he no longer has access to. There's a lot of anticipation here because we're waiting for Payman to attack, but he's waiting because Peter is actively being exposed to more and more traumatic events, which makes him vulnerable. And this element makes him more of an ideal host to eventually be possessed by Payman, the same way how Annie wasn't possessed until she witnessed Steve burning alive. Once Peter hears a noise behind him, he immediately goes out and then back into focus. And for a brief moment, Payman is in focus as though it's finally time for Peter to meet his demise. But instead, we get a brilliant misdirect as the camera pans away from the actual threat to reveal one of the naked cult members from his grandmother's funeral standing in a doorway smiling at him, once again adding to the trauma and preparation of Peter's vessel.
Hell no.
And in this moment, Peter hears a knock from upstairs, redirects his attention to where Payman was, and hidden in the frame, Payman burst from the shadows, chasing Peter through the house and back upstairs to where he locks himself in the attic. From the moment nighttime arrives, Ari starts having a field day with tucking creepy cult people away in the shadows of the frames throughout this sequence. There's such an exceptional use of shadows here that it feels like it may require a couple rewatches to spot every hidden cult member. You might even begin to think that there's areas where they're lurking simply because it's so dark that you're unsure, and this is all intentional. What we witness throughout this film and this entire sequence stems from the director Ari Aster's greatest fears. He revealed during an interview that dying alone is one of his fears, which is basically what we see happening here with Peter since he's the last of his family to go. Then he says, "I'm afraid of being responsible for something horrible happening to someone I love and then not being forgiven." This, of course, is a reference to what happens to Charlie and how Annie never truly forgives Peter for what happened. And then he goes on to reveal how someone in his family turning on him is also one of his fears. How that's something he's not even aware of consciously, but how his nightmares as a kid were always of someone who matters most to him changing. And this is a reference back to how consciously Peter is unaware that Annie is possessed. And now she has changed and turned on him. So just as Peter is Payman's vessel, he is also Ari's vessel for us to experience his deepest fears vicariously through Peter. Now, once Peter makes it to the attic, here is where the dynamics change, as I mentioned earlier. And although this change in positioning isn't expressed in an actual camera frame, we understand that Payman is below Peter at this moment. But the reason why this is never expressed in an actual camera frame isn't simply because they're not in the same room. There's many camera tricks that can be done to show them on each side of the frame simultaneously. This is done because the idea of Peter's safety and control is only an illusion. Now, although Payman does become livid and vengeful when offered a female host, his frustration banging Annie's head against the attic door makes it seem as though Peter might be able to escape. Also, the close-up shot of him locking the door combined with the banging noise and even the music completely dies down as if to emphasize that Peter is getting one final moment of peace.
Yeah, that was crazy.
But once again, Peter is not in control. He eventually notices all the candles the cult has left behind, but he fails to notice the cult member hidden in the darkness behind him. In this wide shot, we the audience may also fail to see this to share that unawareness with Peter. As previously mentioned before, Ari likes to take full advantage of the canvas. After Peter notices the candles and his photo on the floor symbolizing his death and being targeted by the cult, he tries to slap himself awake, hoping it's all a nightmare before hearing a grinding sound above him. This sound brilliantly activates an arc shot, swinging us back to a medium close-up tightly in front of Peter. Arc shots can circle completely around a subject or just move in a curved path like we see here, typically to portray emotional depth. At this time, Peter desperately needs a moment to gather himself, to try to make sense of what he's witnessing. But the sound design and arc shot combined with the medium close-up visually shows how he's being denied of any sympathy. And once he looks up, basically drenched in tears, there's Payman floating above him, slowly sawing off his mother's head with the piano wire. And Payman has once again reclaimed his position of power above Peter. Also, I think it's important to mention how in every scene during this sequence, Payman is already multiple steps ahead of Peter. In Peter's bedroom, Payman is already there before Peter wakes up. In the living room, Payman is already there waiting for Peter. He chases him and the latter is already down for Peter to run into the attic. Peter thinks he's safe in the attic, but Payman moves through the walls and he is already there. This simply reiterates how Peter's demise is inevitable and inescapable. As Payman continues to saw away at Annie's neck, one of the naked cult members rings a bell that further startles Peter. And here is where Peter completely surrenders by jumping out of the window. After Payman is done beheading his mother for the ritual, he then takes full control of Peter. His final moments are arguably the worst of anyone in the film because he is tortured relentlessly. He literally wakes up into a nightmare, which makes this scene where he's trying to wake himself up align so well with what he's experiencing. But that's just the kind of sequence you end up with when the director enjoys traumatizing you. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I've been having a lot of fun creating these for you all, and I'm looking forward to creating a lot more. But as always, that's all
I like that dude, man. Yeah, he definitely earned my subscribe. You know how it go. Go on get this like, bro. Go on get this like, man. Alright, well, that was dope. Chat, that was fun, wasn't it? We learned some good stuff today, didn't we? Well, I'm tired. Told you I had a long ass weekend. I'm going to go to sleep. Well, first I'm going to eat, then I'm going to go to sleep. I hope y'all had a good weekend. Happy Easter. Hope all is well in your world. I hope you have a great week, productive week. Oh, get that much more closer to your dreams, man. You know, work towards it. You know, try not to be unfocused. You know, lead yourself not into temptation and deliver yourself from evil, nigga. Alright? Las Panelones. I say Las Panelones.